Number 7. Making origami cranes. The Oregon State Penitentiary's Behavioral Health Unit introduced the art of origami to one of its adults in custody, Isaac A.G., who was facing a death sentence. Around 2013, one of his investigators urged him to learn origami. Initially, A.G. found this idea absurd. However, a series of strange coincidences changed his mind. First, a friend received an origami book that he tossed to the back of the cells. Then A.G. saw an image of 2 hands holding a folded paper crane in his yoga magazine. Finally, Corporal Charles Parker gave him and other inmates small origami figures. A.G. became curious and began folding. His skill grew, and he eventually became a teacher to another inmate, Michael Isaac. Michael started folding birds before moving on to complex figures like the crane and a 4-horned dragon. The Oregon Department of Corrections blog wrote, "Creating that dragon was a symbol of stepping into the unknown, believing in oneself, and accomplishment." Michael also went on to be a teacher in the origami program, which has helped students with their mental health. One of their first big projects was to have 1,000 cranes made, which they donated to the Center for Hope and Safety in Salem. In February 2023, they sent another 1,000 cranes to Monterey Park City Manager Ron Bowe in recognition of the tragic mass shooting in January. Number 6. Studying. In many ways, Lyle Clinton May is an ordinary Ohio University student. He has a major, an advisor with whom he communicates regularly, and is pursuing a bachelor's degree with a specialization in sociology and psychology. He has already earned his associate degree in social sciences. He takes classes through a correspondence program and stays in contact with his advisor over the phone, a convenience that Central Prison in Raleigh, North Carolina, only afforded to its death row inmates in 2016. May is on death row for 2 counts of first-degree murder. He contests the convictions and sentencing. Despite his isolation from the outside world, May remains in touch with current events and culture thanks to phone access, mail, and television. Through help on the outside, he even runs a blog and participates in a spoken-word, podcast-like program for death row inmates. Over the years, various obstacles made pursuing higher education in prison a struggle for May. Noise, a lack of current information or internet access, lost lessons and exams, miscommunications with academic advisors or professors, the stress and pitfalls of life on the inside, and more have made for an isolated learning experience. Number 5. Yoga. Sonia Sunny Jacobs was sentenced to death for murder in Florida in 1976. She spent the next 5 years in solitary confinement on death row, her vocal cords becoming atrophied because of non-use. She meditated and practiced yoga to pass the time and mentally sustain herself. "I figured if people could survive the concentration camps, then surely I could survive this," she stated. She then spent 12 years among the general prison population, to whom she began teaching yoga. Her partner and father of their 2 children, Jesse Tafero, was also wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death. He was executed on May 4, 1990, 2 years before evidence of their innocence was made known. With the help of lawyers who worked for many years without pay, and friends who assisted them in the research, Sunny had her conviction overturned in 1992 and achieved her liberty. Initially, she struggled to adjust. She stated, "Outside I had nothing, no money, no place to go. The world I left no longer existed." However, today she is married to Peter Pringle, who was also wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death in Ireland. Pringle also practiced yoga and meditation to maintain his sanity and well-being while on death row. In addition to teaching yoga and meditation, the couple are prominent activists against the death penalty. Number 4. Listening and writing to a radio station. The Allen B. Polunsky unit in Texas is home to 106.5 FM, The Tank, the prison's radio station. The station is low wattage and can only be heard for a minute or two after leaving the prison parking lot. However, the programming is as plentiful and varied as any commercial station on the outside, with shows covering everything from heavy metal to self-improvement. The station is recorded in a studio hidden deep inside the prison and stocked full of equipment, most of which was donated by churches and religious groups. It allows men on one of the most restrictive death rows in the country to have a voice that reaches beyond their cells and long after their execution. Usually, prisoners at Polunsky are not allowed to write letters to each other. However, for the radio station, the warden carved out an exception, allowing them to pass along essays and poems for the staff chaplains to deliver to the DJs. This affords the most isolated men in Texas a rare chance to be part of the prison community. The Tank's programming includes a wide range of offerings, from midday announcements to stock tips to religious services to heavy metal shows. It provides a unique opportunity for inmates on death row to express themselves and connect with others. Number 3. Knitting. Lindsay Sandiford is a British grandmother on death row in Bali. She was arrested in 2012 for smuggling 1.6 million pounds or nearly 5 kilos of cocaine. As of 2023, she is awaiting the date of her execution by firing squad. Sandiford has set up a knitting venture behind bars to provide desperately needed funds for a final appeal. She has taught 20 other inmates to knit, and they now work in their cells making teddy bears, jumpers, shawls, nativity scenes, and Easter boxes, which are sent to church groups in Australia. Sales of the items have so far generated more than £7,000 towards Sandiford's appeal, as well as money for wool and extra meals and provisions for those inmates who make the items in sweltering conditions inside Bali's Kerobokan prison. The items have become crucial to Sandiford's chances of survival as she tries to lodge her appeal. Sandiford set up the knitting operation with the support of Christian pastors who visited her in prison after she was denied funding by the UK government for her appeal against the death penalty. She began with wool brought in by her sister to make a christening blanket for her granddaughter Ayla, who was born after Sandiford's arrest in 2012. Number 2. Writing children's books. Stanley "Tookie" Williams co-founded the notorious Crip Street Gang in 1971 when he was 17 years old. He was a death row inmate who transformed into an anti-gang activist. In an effort of atonement, he created and published a series of 10 books for children called Tookie Speaks Out Against Gangs, warning against the dangers of gang involvement and speaking out against violence. During his time in prison, Williams realized the errors of his ways and teamed up with journalist and author Barbara Becknell, who helped him write and publish the series. He also wrote his memoir and a book called Life in Prison for teenagers, warning them about what he made of his life and why not to follow in his footsteps. Williams's dedication to ending gang warfare in the lives of inner-city children earned him a 2001 Nobel Peace Prize nomination. Williams was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 5 times and the Nobel Prize in Literature 4 times. He is the only man in history to be nominated while imprisoned. Williams was executed in 2005. His greatest wish was to reach out to children with these books so that no child would make the same mistakes he did. Number 1. Designing a garden installation. Timothy Young is currently on death row in San Quentin State Prison, fighting to prove his innocence in the California appellate court system. He has collaborated with award-winning artist Jackie Sumel on a participatory public sculpture and a garden project called Solitary Garden, perched on a slope at the University of California, Santa Cruz, overlooking Monterey Bay. Young has been held in solitary confinement since 2006, while trying to prove his innocence in a murder case through the California appeals system. For the sculptural work, he corresponds with students and volunteers via letters, poems, and drawings to direct the planting of a garden. At the center of the garden is the empty footprint of a 6-foot by 9-foot solitary confinement cell. Young, describing the art piece, said, "My plight, my journey, and everything about me is encompassed in that garden, and I appreciate that people view it and have a better understanding of who I am and what I've been through." Solitary Garden is part of the Barring Freedom Initiative, a collaboration between the University of California, Santa Cruz Institute of the Arts and Sciences, IAS, the San Jose Museum of Art, SJMA, and the John Jay College of Criminal Justice. The initiative includes a contemporary art exhibition, a participatory public art project, an interactive website, and an online event series on art, prisons, policing, and justice.